Eagles Entertainment.
Eagle Eye in the Sky is fueled by Gatorade, the official sports drink of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Anything that moves, I don't care who it is. Let's go. Give me everything you got. Play fast, play hard. Let's beat these boys tonight in their house. It's party time. It's party time. Hey, we go. Touchdown!
You are listening to the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast. Now here's your host, Fran Duffy.
That's right on the weekend. Week 2 is in the books as the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, continues. I'm Fran Duffy, and as always, I think we've got a great show for you here on episode number 271. At the top of this week's show, we've got Chalk Talk, where I chat with Greg Cosell about the Eagles and their Week 2 loss against the LA Rams. And obviously a tough one to swallow for the Eagles. They didn't really play well on either side of the ball overall in this game. We saw some bright spots. We will talk about it, but obviously some struggles here. Defensively, they struggled to stop Jared Goff and that Rams offense. On the offensive side of the ball, you saw some spurts. They were able to move the ball in chunks, but no big plays. And then obviously the key turnover there in the second half. We'll talk all about this matchup, but then also look ahead to the Eagles and their Week 3 contest against the Cincinnati Bengals. We will do all of that at the top of the show in Chalk Talk. Before we get into that, I hope you guys have all enjoyed the extra episode with Ben Fennell at the end of the week. We're diving a little bit deeper into the matchup. We're talking about some key stats. We're talking about key matchups to watch as well. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Make sure you go on to our Apple Podcast page. Leave us a rating. Leave us a comment if you like what you've heard. And if you have a question about the Eagles, you can go on there and leave a question. I loved my interview last week as well with robey-coleman. Really insightful stuff from Nikel. Obviously, he had a rough outing against his former team, but I thought he gave some really good insight just into his career and also playing the nickel corner position. Really cool stuff from robey-coleman last week here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. Really appreciate everybody that has taken the time to go on and leave a comment, leave a question, especially now that this season has officially gone underway. All right, enough of all that. Let's dive now into our chat with Greg Cosell. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Let's get down to business. It's time for Chalk Talk.
Joining us once again here on Chalk Talk on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade, NFL Film senior producer Greg Cosell. And Greg, we're going to do our best here to talk about this Eagles loss. Obviously a disheartening game, you know, on both sides of the football, and we'll kind of talk about it. A lot of the things that we discussed here on the show last week with the Sean McVay offense and what their philosophies are, what their core staple play concepts are. We saw a lot of that. Everything that we talked about on Eagles game plan with you last week has kind of showed up in this game. But let's start on the other side of the ball. We typically start with the Eagles offense. And, I thought we saw some good things here in this game. There were times where they were able to move the ball and generate some momentum. And then obviously there were some not good things from this game. And obviously some up and down play from quarterback Carson Wentz. He left some more throws on the field this week. We could talk about the interception as well, but just walking away from watching the game on TV Sunday and then watching the film this morning, Monday, on film, what I guess is the big takeaway from you after watching the game twice over now?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. I think there are some positives and there's clearly some negatives, as the team and Doug would absolutely say when you lose 37-19. I think Miles Sanders is a real positive. And I think as you go forward, you're really seeing that he can develop into a multi-dimensional back who can run and can catch. And you're hoping that he becomes even, I don't want to say a bigger part of the offense. He did have 20 carries. You're not going to give him 30 carries. But I mean, you feel like there's always a big play waiting to happen with Miles Sanders. And I think you feel pretty good about that. On the other hand, from things that would be in the if you're making a list of pros and cons, the things that would be in the con category would be that the pass game just lacks, number one, some consistency, and number two, some orchestration of some big plays. Because even that drive that ended with the interception, we'll get to the interception, obviously, the Eagles are now built as a team that seems to take a lot of plays to have to score, and that's really, really hard to do. So one bad play, whatever the play, whether it's a sack, whether it's an incomplete pass, whether it's a penalty, whatever it may be, it just seems like that really kind of puts a crimp in what they're trying to get done. It's an offense that needs to try to find ways to get more chunk explosive plays. To me, as I watch the tape, both weeks, and I don't know how you feel, but that to me really stands out. I think there needs to be more explosive chunk plays in this offense.
Yeah, I think when you look at the week 1 versus Washington to last week or to this past game against LA, certainly some differences, and some of that may have been what happened in week 1 with the offensive line, just the overall protection, not being able to hold up well enough for Carson Wentz, and the amount of sacks, and not wanting to put Carson in that kind of situation with Aaron Donald on the opposite side. Maybe they didn't want to have him hold on to the ball that long. Certainly a lot less in terms of down the field throws in this past game against LA. We saw a bunch of them. I believe I saw a stat somewhere that Carson Wentz's average air yards per attempt was higher than any quarterback in the league after week 1. Obviously that will dip down significantly here in this game. To me, obviously, look, he missed some throws, Greg. He left some plays on the field. There were missed throws in the middle of the field. There were some along the sideline. The one to Ertz on that outbreaking route. The fade to Dallas Goedert in the fourth quarter, I believe that was, against Jalen Ramsey. That was a hell of a release by Dallas Goedert against one of the best corners in the NFL. Gets on top of him, and Carson simply underthrew it.
Well, I think, and again, we don't know. Only he could tell you, and I don't know if he addressed it, but he threw the back shoulder when, in fact, Goddard was on top of Ramsey. And normally the rule is if your receiver's on top of the corner, you throw the true fade. You throw it over the top. It's only if the corner is on top of the receiver that you throw the back shoulder. And again, unless Carson would explain it, I thought he threw the back shoulder. So I can't say that was an inaccurate throw. He may have made the wrong throw based on what the situation was.
Sure, that's a valid point. Let's talk through, because I think it's a similar kind of discussion with the interception, which was, really the pivotal play of this game, Greg.
Without question.
You're looking at it, the Eagles are able to get a little bit of momentum. They score some points at the end of the first half. They pull within a score. The defense comes out to start the third quarter. They get a 3-and-out, their first real big stop of the game. The offense gets the ball in their own end. They drive methodically down the field, kind of dink and dunk their way, 6 yards here, 9 yards there, 5 yards. And then they get into the red zone. They're on the 21-yard line, basically the high red zone. And they have this interception. Take us through the play and what your takeaway was from watching it on film.
Yeah, and because I've seen a lot of football in my life, when I saw that play on tape, and I probably looked at it as you, I'm sure, did 15 times. That's what we do.
More than that, I think, unfortunately.
Right. You just keep looking and looking. And, it was 1st and 10, first of all. And then, like you said, they had just gotten to the 21, a great drive. I believe if they had scored a touchdown there, they would have gone ahead, correct?
Yep.
It was 21-16, was it not?
I believe so, yes.
Yes. So, the way I saw the play without knowing the play call, but like I said, I've seen a lot of football, was it looked to me like Carson booted to his left, and that the design of the play was to hit Arcega-Whiteside on the backside post. Now, you and I have spoken since I watched that tape, and obviously the Eagles have spoken about it publicly, that it was actually a front side read to the 3-receiver side, because there were 3 receivers on the front side, the boot side of the play, and Arcega-Whiteside was technically not part of the progression. Now, if that's what they say, I take what they say at face value. At the end of the day, I thought Carson saw that Arcega-Whiteside had a step, which he clearly did when he started to release the ball, had a step on Williams, the corner. But I thought that Fuller, the safety, who was actually on the front side but did not jump the crosser by Ertz, he was in good position to make a play on the ball. And I thought maybe at the last minute, Carson felt like, hey, I can't really take Arcega-Whiteside across the field the way I want to, and just try to sneak it in there. And that allowed Williams to make up the ground. So that's the way I saw the play. But again, it turned out, I guess I'm wrong, because I thought that was, a misdirection concept where they were going to go back to the one-on-one with Arcega-Whiteside on the post.
Yeah, I think, going back to what you said,
and I've seen that before, just so you know.
Of course. Yeah. And going back to what you said in the beginning, it's 1st and 10, just had this long drive. To me, it goes back to the risk mitigation, right? In terms of, understanding the situation in that scenario, maybe don't try and push the ball into that spot. The thing is, and you and I have talked about this before, when you've got that aggressive nature, I'd rather lean that way right? Like you'd rather have the guy that you have to pull the reins on a little bit. And how many times have we seen Carson Wentz make throws on the backside of progressions where he's got a three-man route concept to one side of the field, and he throws the backside post to Torrey Smith against the Cardinals in 2017 for a long touchdown on the backside of mesh, or when he throws the backside dig to Jordan Matthews on the backside of a three-level flood concept. Like, we've seen him make these throws on the backside of these progressions, and we say, awesome job, Carson. That's a great throw. That's quarterbacking on that play. It didn't work out. And the corner made a great play. The ball was a little bit inside, as you mentioned, because he's trying to avoid the safety Fuller. And it goes against the Eagles, and it kind of turned the tide in the game.
No question. And again, I'm more a process guy. So yeah, he threw an interception, so it's easy to say terrible play, and that's always easy. The only thing you would say, and again, only Carson could answer this, and if he truly felt that it was risky in any way, shape, or form, it is first down. And that's what,
Yep.
And you're in field goal range, and it's 21-16, and you're early in the third quarter.
If it's 3rd and 7, middle of the fourth quarter, maybe that throws a little bit.
Then you got to try to make a throw.
Yep, exactly.
Right. But, so that's where you get into game management, game situations, those kinds of things. But he tried to, you hit it right on the head. One of the things that we've loved about Wentz, and the reason why people in the league really like Wentz and think that he can really be a high-level player, is because he's willing to make those kinds of throws. And he's made a lot of those in his career. And by the way, he's not a high interception thrower.
No, he has not been earlier in his career, throughout his career.
Obviously he's thrown 4 through 2 games, which is, for him, way uncharacteristic.
Yeah.
But he's not been a high interception thrower. Even for a guy who does take some risks.
Yep.
So, it's just one of those plays. In some ways, it's just very representative and symptomatic of the season through 2 games.
Yeah, certainly, things that they've got to improve going into week 3. Doug Peterson talked a lot on Monday about just the lack of timing, and, whether it's the shortened offseason, obviously all 32 teams dealing with the shortened offseason. But when you're talking about just you see that on film. You see that watching the game. The offense just does not have timing in the passing game right now. We talked about it with the 2 interceptions last week against Washington. Just overall, it just that nothing is quite hitting on all cylinders right now in the passing game, and it's something that they've got to correct here rather quickly in the next few games, because there's not really a lot of easy opponents here coming down the next couple months here of the season.
No, and I think if I could, because I know we have a lot to get through. I think one of the things that's interesting, and again, I'm just going to give my personal take. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's not a knock on anybody. It's just my personal take. The Eagles in this particular game, almost 80% of their offensive snaps feature 12 personnel. Now, they may feel that gives them the best opportunity to play offense because they're dealing with a rookie wide receiver in Rager. As much as we like him and think he'll be a really good player, and I think he will be, but he's still a rookie playing in his second game in a pandemic offseason. Obviously, for whatever reason, they don't feel real comfortable with their other wide receivers at this point because they're not playing a lot of snaps. So they must feel, for whatever reason, not real comfortable. They only had 11 snaps of 11 personnel in the game. But I think it's hard in today's NFL to play that much with 12 personnel and really have an expansive offense. Now, again, it's early in the season. They're 0-2. I'm sure no one expects to be 0-2. Everybody expects to be 2-0 after 2 games. But I think that's a hard way to live in the NFL, to play so many snaps, because as athletic as Goddard is, as outstanding as Ertz is at what he is, they don't present the kind of speed that you'd like to have on the field.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they, continue to deploy those guys moving forward as the young receivers start to get more experience. I thought we saw, you brought up Jalen Reagor. I thought we saw some good things from Jalen, especially he made some tough catches, Greg, over the middle of the field, took some shots, was able to bounce back up. That one in-breaker early in the game was really impressive. He took the shot from the backside safety there. Obviously took the helmet-to-helmet hit from Kaiser down on the goal line as well. But they gave him some yak opportunities in this game, tried to get him the ball quickly and see if he can make some plays in space, threw him a couple screens. But what stands out to me, and I believe you and I have talked about this, I know I've talked about this on the show, is that, it stood out to me early in training camp that he wasn't going to just be a gadget and deep ball guy, that he was going to be a fully functional receiver in this offense. And I thought that Sunday kind of, gave us a little bit of peek at that. Obviously still young and still trying to work his way into the lineup and into, have full understanding of the scheme and all that. But, showing that he's got that ability to work between the numbers, work between the hashes, and be a factor, that he's not just going to be a pure outside the numbers receiver, a good sign for his future trajectory.
I agree 100%. And, you mentioned a play when we spoke earlier where they got him the ball off that motion, across the formation and get him the ball where he could run after catch. I think you and I would probably agree. We'd like to see more of that.
Yep.
Just get him in space, let him, because again, not that those plays turn out to be 50-yard plays, but hey, maybe he breaks a tackle and it becomes 25 yards, and those are explosive chunk plays in the NFL. And, that's something, look, maybe it's from spending all those years and with my good buddy Ron Jaworski, but with the pass game, I often think about how do you orchestrate explosive plays, because those are the plays that change games. And I'm not talking about 80-yard touchdowns. They're very rare in the NFL.
Right. I mean, how many of Jared Goff's completions would you say were high difficulty throws on Sunday? With the way that they played. I think when you look at just the way that they play offense, like you're able to generate some of those layups for them, continuing to see them. We see the play with Jalen Hurts in the backfield to create space in the middle of the field for Goddard. You saw that underneath throw to Rager. We've seen some of these plays in action. It's a matter of, number one, Carson being able to connect on them when they're there, when they're available. The receivers being able to capitalize on the back end of them as well. But when those plays are there, they've got to be made.
And there's a balance because, I'd like to see more intermediate and vertical route concepts, but then there's the balance between protection. And obviously in this game coming off the week before, the number one priority, particularly through the first quarter or so, was to make sure that the ball got out of Carson's hands, that they completed passes. Because, I remember going back years with my buddy Phil Simms telling me that when you're a quarterback, the last thing you want to be in a game is 1 for 7 to start. You want to be 5 for 5, even if it's for 15 yards, because you want to complete balls. You want to get the ball out of your hand and complete balls. And I think that was the priority in this game to start. But, as I said, and again, just my personal opinion, it's just my upbringing in the game. At some point, I think you've got to try to orchestrate and manufacture getting the ball down the field with intermediate and vertical route concepts. And hey, we'll get to the Bengals, but I think, this could be a good week to really to see where that goes.
We talked about the offensive line. Obviously, no sacks on Carson Wentz. Certainly a huge improvement from week one. I thought they got good movement up front in the run game as well. We saw some good double teams, getting some movement at the point of attack. To me, that was big. And when you talk about Miles Sanders and his performance, I thought that there were some plays that there were some yards he left on the field, particularly early in the first half.
I would agree. Yeah, I can see one play right now where I felt, man, why didn't he just hit that?
Yeah, there were a couple.
But I think, to be honest with you, on some level, he's that kind of runner. And sometimes great runners, you just have to let them be intuitive and instinctive. And again, I'm not defending him because I don't know the answer to this, but I think, usually the way a lot of great backs are coached is you tell them where they need to go on their first 2 steps based on whatever the blocking scheme is and the play design. And then it's pretty much God takes over.
Right.
And you're not coaching a running back on what he's going to do on his 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th step. His first couple of steps are part of the play design. And then it's what he sees.
Yep. No, I think that's a very good point. And just, looking at the offensive line, I came away impressed with how they came off the ball, how they fired off the ball in this game against the Rams, especially with some of the talent they've got up front. You look at Brockers and those guys.
You may know this better than I, and I'm not charting every play. I actually thought Herbig had a lot of good snaps.
He did. You talk about even when whether it's in pass pro, in the run game, we talked about some of the movement plays, but even he had a couple of reach blocks that were nice. He got out on the one scream. Yeah, I mean,
in the run game, I thought he was impressive, and he kind of reminded me of when I watched him at Stanford, because for a big man, I thought he had pretty light feet coming out, relatively speaking, and I thought he showed that on a number of plays in this game.
Yeah, the screen to Scott, which was another, I believe, if I remember right, that was the Jalen Reagor play. They brought Jalen Reagor in orbit motion to the left. They faked the bubble to Reagor, and then they threw the screen to Scott on the right side. Kelsey gets out there, and Herbig gets out there. And Herbig did a nice job of getting out in space. But even just some of the plays in the run game, like you mentioned, you get to see some of that athleticism on display. I agree. I thought Herbig had a nice step up from week 1 to week 2.
Yes,
which was
I would agree.
Good to see. Matt Pryor steps in. The Isaac Seumalo injury tough. What have you seen from Seumalo over the course of the last couple of years? I feel like he's developed into a really reliable, solid starter, if not good starter, for the Eagles at left guard. And obviously he's going to be out here for a couple of weeks now.
I would agree. I mean, I think, again, I'm not an offensive line guru, and I can't think of every offensive guard in the league. The Quentin Nelsons come to mind. I actually think Richie Incognito is a really good guard. But I think Isaac Seumalo has kind of moved into that second tier of being a really solid player. I agree with you. I mean, whether he's still relatively young. Is his injury serious? Is he going to miss time? Do we know?
It sounds like it's going to be a couple weeks. Yeah, Doug Peterson had mentioned there's a chance that he could go on short-term IR. Obviously, here Monday night, we don't know if that's going to be the case, but he did say that in his Monday press conference.
But assuming we get all 16 in, it's not a season ender.
No, it sounded like it would be like one where he could return in a couple weeks.
Okay, well, no, I think he's a really solid player. And I think they, ultimately, I know they see him as a center down the road, and I know some people feel the same way, who I respect. But right now he's playing left guard, and I think he's a solid player.
Well, let's go over to the other side, Greg. Let's talk about the defense, and we talk about the Sean McVay offense, and all the things that we mentioned, right? I mean, you're talking about the backfield actions with the outside zone stretch action, the jet sweep action, the orbit motion. You talk about Goff under center, tight splits. We saw all of that. We saw the screen game. We saw basically all of it, and really, what it came down to me in this game was they had great success on first and second down, creating some nice chunk plays. They got into third and manageables, and they just kept the Eagles on their skates from start to finish. Yeah, for the most part, from start to finish. When the Eagles were able to get into third and longs and pin their ears back, the defensive line was able to get back there and impact Goff. But when it was third and short, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, the defense they couldn't stop them. It was really tough sledding for the defense.
I think we saw 4 of the fundamental foundations of the Ram offense in this game that they executed well: play action boot, shifting in motion, misdirection. Yep. That's the Rams offense. And what they do, and I actually made this note, and I was, I make a lot of notes when I watch tape, and every once in a while I type something, I say, hey, I think that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So I said that, and the first part of this I said before, it's the second part. The Rams put a lot of stress on the rules of the defense at the second and third levels. And here's the part that struck me watching the tape. They make you play with your eyes and then make you wrong. And I think that showed up a number of times. I think it showed up on the first touchdown to Higbee when Nate Gary had his eyes in the wrong place. I think it showed up on, there was one out route to Van Jefferson where Maddox was looking into the backfield and he shouldn't have been. The play I'm speaking about.
Oh yeah, yep. It was a play action fake, and his eyes were squarely in the backfield.
And he's not even a primary run support player on that play.
Yep.
But the Rams do this so well, and then of course, for the Rams, the throwback misdirection wheel route to Higbee, that's not a gimmick play for them. That's part of what they do. Yeah. It was play action boot and just a misdirection throwback. That's part of what they do.
One of the things I wrote about today, just kind of looking at this game, their play action game. I think a lot of people, it's like one of those axioms with football. It's like, the run sets up play action. I feel like with the Rams, and I would throw this with a couple other teams in there as well, their play action game sets up their run game. And you look at a lot of their chunk plays. Right. I feel like, you look on the backside, the Eagles, and it's not like a wholesale, like, oh man, like Brandon Graham was really playing the quarterback there. Look, he completely left his area of responsibility. But it's those slight hesitations where now instead of being, front side in the C gap, now he's just a little bit off and the tight end or the tackle's able to cut him off. It's like you see that with the safeties, you see that with the linebackers. Like there was just this constant hesitation on some of those chunk plays in the run game. Maybe not obviously it happened on the 40-yarder to Henderson late in the game, but even on the 7-yarders and the 8-yarders and the 6-yarders on first down, and those things add up. and it allows them to stay ahead of the sticks and keep them in favorable situations for the offense on third down.
Well, and the other thing about the play action pass game, and not a lot of people talk about this, particularly when it comes from outside zone, which a lot more teams in the NFL are doing, by the way.
Yeah.
And the reason they do it, Fran, is not for the impact on the second level or the third level. It's the impact on the D line, because you know what happens? The D line moves laterally in response to the outside zone run action. And then big men have to redirect to rush the quarterback. And that takes a second or so. And that's all you need in the pass game.
Yep.
So you're getting the first level of the defense, the D line, to move laterally as opposed to going up the field into pass rush lanes.
I feel like that was a lot of the reaction, the instant reaction on Twitter and in the media yesterday on Sunday was, where's the pass rush? Where's the pass rush? Jared Goff was, to me, like the game plan kind of kept that from happening, and their execution on first and second down kept that from happening. And that's why when you look at, when it was third down, yeah, like they were able to get after. You see Brandon Graham, affecting Jared Goff. You see Fletcher Cox and Malik Jackson kind of collapsing the pocket. You saw some of those things, but those opportunities were just few and far between in this game because they could not get everything else in check.
And that's when the Rams are at their best. This is what they look like.
Yep.
They don't get into a lot of third and longs. Goff is for the most part, he's a pocket quarterback. Now I'm including boot action because he's essentially just moving to a new pocket where he's comfortable. My point is he's not a second reaction player.
Right.
And if you can stay on schedule and you can run your offense with all the elements we spoke about, those 4 elements I mentioned, then they're a tough offense to play against.
I don't know that there's really too much else to talk about. I mean, I think that it was just an ugly game. Obviously disheartening for a number of reasons on both sides of the ball.
Although I did like, just from tape study, I did like those 2 traps where Cox ended up on the first one. He just threw
unbelievable
the center away. Who's the center? Was it Blythe? He's the center.
Yes.
Yeah, and on the second one, because he was actually not a 1 technique, he was more of a 2-eye. Blythe couldn't even get to him, and he just tackled whichever, was it Henderson for a 1-yard loss.
Yep.
Those are just fun plays to watch.
And even there was one, Malik Jackson's really squeezed really well. They ran one to his side, and you just saw his block recognition and that short area burst as well, the power to be able to kind of collapse and disrupt that play as well. There were a few of those, and you see TJ Edwards run a gap and make a play in the behind the line of scrimmage. I almost felt like I couldn't post those on social media today because I feel like fans just wanted to see what happened in the loss? How did this happen? So maybe later this week I'll post some of those plays.
We saw the Eagles too play, and with what I guess would be called big nickel, since Mills is now a safety. They played numerous snaps that way. No, I mean the Eagles. I think they tried to do some different things defensively, and we'll see if it continues. Obviously, because the way this game played out, they get lost in the shuffle. But we'll see as we go forward if these kinds of things continue.
Yep. Well, let's look forward to this matchup here. And obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals, they come into town at 0-2 as well. But this is a team that has fought through these 2 losses. They gave the Chargers everything they could handle week 1. Entertaining Thursday night game last week against the Cleveland Browns, their rival. Joe Burrow. Greg, he's been pretty impressive through 2 games.
Oh, yeah.
What have you seen from Joe Burrow in his first 2 games?
I mean, I think, what stands out, and this is not an X and O point, but I think what really stands out is just you see the poise and composure. He's a very calm player. And I think that there's a lot of things going on here. We'll get to it. I think that they're a team that plays a lot of empty, which I think Burrow's really comfortable with. We saw week 1, they played meaningful snaps with 5 true wide receivers on the field. The second game, they didn't do that quite as much, but it's clearly part of their concept. We'll see if they do it against the Eagles. Through 2 games, they've had some issues with their tackles and pass protection, which is something that the Eagles ideally would like to be able to exploit, take advantage of. The left tackle is the second-year player from Alabama, Jonah Williams, who missed all of last season. And the right tackle is Bobby Hart, who's started a lot of games in the NFL, but has really struggled through 2 weeks. That's where you'd like to see the Eagles really be able to do some damage. But Burrow is a comfortable quarterback. He sees things well. It's time we stop saying he's deceptively athletic, because you know what? He is athletic.
Yep.
We don't need to say he's deceptively athletic. He's
some design quarterback draws for him in both games. Some design QB runs here, Greg.
Absolutely. And that 23-yard touchdown week 1 against the Chargers came out of empty with 5 wide receivers on the field. Really well-designed play.
So talk about, we talk about empty. Talk about why that is a favorable situation for the quarterback. A lot of people say, oh, well, there's no one in the backfield. There's very little protection. But what are the pros of being in an empty set for the quarterback?
Well, particularly if you spread it out of empty, you're forcing the defense to spread out because they can't leave receivers totally uncovered. So you're forcing the defense to spread out and show their hand before the snap of the ball.
It's truth serum. You're giving the defense truth serum. They've got to show their hand.
Correct. And what you're always trying to do as an offensive coach with a quarterback is give them as much information as possible before the snap of the ball. So if you can truly spread out a defense, force them to declare what they're going to do, zone, man, pressure, you're giving the quarterback information before the snap. And Burrow is very quick. He's very good with, my phrase is elimination and isolation. He knows what's not there and he knows what is there. He's a very rhythmic player as well. So normally when you go empty, you're not having your quarterback take deep drops because your O-line theoretically, particularly this O-line, struggling to protect. So you're doing more quick game, quick rhythm throws, which they've done a lot of through 2 games. They've not thrown the ball down the field a whole lot either.
Yeah, they haven't, and I know the ones they have, they've missed. I mean, they haven't been able to hook up for any plays down the field yet.
I personally think they'll get more into that as the season progresses, just because it's all new. And as much as I like Burrow, and I know you do too, at the end of the day, he's still a rookie quarterback playing in the NFL. So I think they'll do more of that as they go forward. But they haven't done a lot of that themselves as far as pushing it down the field. Although week 1, he overthrew A.J. Green. Then he also had a play to Ross, which I personally believe Ross should have caught. I don't think Burrow.
I thought so too. Yeah, he put that on the money. That was.
I don't think Burrow overthrew that. That should have been caught.
Yep.
And by the way, you can throw the ball vertically without deep drops. Fade balls are vertical throws. Even post routes, if timed properly, you can get rid of those balls without being, it's not a true 7-step timing throw. So you can get rid of some post routes within the context of 5-step timing, rhythm. So, but the point is, getting back to empty, I think you'll see more of it. I think Burrow's comfortable with it, and I think the offense is comfortable with it.
By far the most empty snaps in the league, by a very wide margin.
21 in the last game.
Yeah.
21 snaps. Of course, he dropped back over 60 times, but approximately a third were in empty sets.
Yeah, it's they're living in empty. And I think with Burrow, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, quick release, tough as nails, accurate. The poise is really impressive. Led them on a great 2-minute drive at the end of the game against the Chargers in week 1.
And by the way, I thought his best throw in that drive, he made a tight window throw versus zone, actually to Ross, and it was just, for him, it just looked like a routine throw.
Yep.
You probably remember the play. He stuck it
no
on
question.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been impressive. He's looked really, really good so far. And that was one of the things I was interested to see when you talk about those 5, the empty protections with the 5-man route concepts. Like, that was something they did so much at LSU. They didn't do that much of it last year in Cincinnati. I believe I've got some numbers here on that. Yeah, the Bengals last year in 2019. Only 9% of their snaps came in empty, coming out they're at 25% right now. So a big jump from 9% to 25%. Obviously, small sample size of 2 games, but a lot more empty to accommodate for Joe Burrow. Let's talk about the guy that is also just really impressive on film. And obviously, look, this guy had major off the field issues in college at Oklahoma. But when you're talking about what he's put out on film, Joe Mixon, the running back. One of the most physically gifted backs in the NFL. His ability to create yardage for himself. He's always gaining ground. In a blink of an eye, he goes from, he's stopped at the line of scrimmage to there's 4 yards, there's 5 yards. Tough. He's got the ability to make people miss. Obviously, can be used in the passing game. Mixon, he's a handful.
Well, I'm going to defer to Bill Belichick here and then leave it at that if you're okay with it.
I'm okay with that.
Bill Belichick, when they were getting ready to play Cincinnati, when they were on to Cincinnati.
Yep.
said that Joe Mixon was one of the 3 best backs in the league. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a ridiculous
Since I think you can make an argument that he is with his multiple skill set.
Yep, I agree. I would agree. You've got Giovanni Bernard still in that backfield. They've got a couple other guys there as well. Let's talk about the receiver. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're getting to the receivers, obviously. They actually have a really good skill position group. I mean, this is not a team lacking with skill position players.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned they had a handful of snaps in week 1 where they went 5 wide, literally 5 receivers on the field. You look at AJ Green. Obviously, look, he's missed a large amount of time over the last couple of years due to injury, but still very physically gifted. John Ross is an explosive kid. Tyler Boyd has turned into a really nice player. A guy that I was really high on coming out of college. T. Higgins, they took in the second round this year out of Clemson. He's long. He can run. They got the kid Mike Thomas. They claimed actually off the Rams roster or off the Rams waiver wire. Auden Tate, out of Florida State. Alex Erickson is still there. So, yeah, I mean, they've got targets, man. They've got guys.
Just to comment quickly on a couple of them.
Yeah.
I was really glad to see Michael Thomas get some opportunities because he came out in the same draft as the other Michael Thomas. And I remember watching this Michael Thomas at Southern Miss, and I thought he had a chance to be a quality NFL wideout, not a big time number, but to play and play meaningful snaps and be a good wideout. And it didn't work out with the Rams for whatever reason.
Right.
Obviously the Rams have pretty good receivers. But I'm just glad to see him get an opportunity. He's made some catches through 2 weeks. The other guy that's very interesting to me is Auden Tate, because I thought that there was something there when he came out of Florida State. He was heavy, he was overweight, but there was a skill set there. Even being heavy and overweight, he was not plodding. And then last year, he lost weight, and through the last, 6, 7, 8 games when all their receivers went down, he showed something. And I'm just trying to make the point that they've got a ton of receivers, and this is not an offense to be taken lightly.
I remember, I think I read over the weekend, Auden Tate not happy with his limited usage.
I'm sure not.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the targets that they've got, obviously it's tough to those reps are tough to come by.
And Boyd's one of the best slot receivers in the game.
Yeah, I really, I was a really big fan of his coming out. I liked a lot of what he brought to the table. You go to the tight end room, they go 13 personnel at times. They scored a touchdown out of empty 13 personnel last week against Cleveland. CJ Uzomah looks like he's banged up, long, lanky kid out of Auburn, has the ability to attack vertically. But then Drew Sample, second-round pick out of Washington. I liked Drew Sample coming out. Not a flashy player, but a well-rounded kid. They'll use him as a lead blocker, really reliable hands, underrated athlete, sneaky athlete, if we're going to use the Joe Burrow lexicon there. But, this is a guy that, can make some plays with the ball in his hands as well.
It's funny. UW turns out these tight ends that we all think of as blocking tight ends, and they're a little more athletic than you think. Will Disley's like that with the Seahawks.
Right.
I think Sample's kind of the same way. They're a little more athletic than you think, but they're good blockers.
You look at the offensive line, this is, I think going back to what we talked about really over the last couple of weeks, going into these matchups, this is a matchup where you hope the Eagles are able to make some hay here. I think you look at Jonah Williams. He's in his first year starting as left tackle, former first-round pick, missed all of his rookie season with an injury. So really kind of, seeing his first action. Got beaten up by Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram in week 1, but a lot of people get beaten up by Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. So you're not going to hold that against him. But, Michael Jordan at left guard has turned into a nice player, a former mid-round pick out of Ohio State. But after that, you got Trey Hopkins at center, Xavier Su'a-Filo, who the Eagles know well. He's been in the division with the Dallas Cowboys. He's the starting right guard right now. I believe Fred Johnson has got.
Fred Johnson played this past week because Su'a-Filo was hurt. So I don't know what that status. I don't know his injury, so I don't know if he plays this week.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be something to keep an eye on. And then
Fred Johnson had some issues, by the way.
Yeah, no, he did, and that's what I feel like. You look at the right side of that offensive line for sure as an area of that you look to be able to attack. Certainly going into this matchup.
Without question. Again, but then you get into that same issue, if they can stay on schedule. We just saw that with the Rams. If they has a great feel for the timing and rhythm in the pass game, the ball comes out. You have to get them into third and long. Just like you said, the few times that the Rams were in third and long, that's where the Eagles pass rush showed up.
And, a lot of people will talk about the relationship, hey, Zach Taylor's the head coach. His brother, Press Taylor, is, the Eagles pass game coordinator, and that connection. Remember, Zach Taylor comes from Sean McVay. I mean, he was with Sean McVay in LA. Now,
Right.
the way that they're playing offense, very different right now, right?
Yes.
But in terms of being able to see, like, hey, this is the stuff that Sean McVay was able to use against the Eagles with success last week. I'll be interested to see if they kind of switch some things up. Obviously, they've got a couple extra days of preparation as well to get ready. We'll see what they kind of throw at the Eagles. A little bit of an interesting wrinkle in this game.
Yeah, but you're right. Their offense does not look like a Sean McVay offense.
No.
But don't forget, you're also playing to your quarterback. And
Yes.
And Burrow is different than Jared Goff.
Yep, no question. All right, let's go to the defensive side. Lou Anarumo is the defensive coordinator. It's a defensive backs coach by trade. He's in year 2 with Cincinnati. Really his first crack at being a defensive coordinator. 3-4 hybrid scheme. So you're going to see, guys kind of
a lot of five across.
No question.
Yeah.
And they've got some guys that they kind of bring in waves along the defensive front. Geno Atkins has been hurt, so has not played yet. But look, they've got Carlos Dunlap, who's still playing at a high level off the left side. They signed DJ Reader to be the nose tackle. Mike Daniels, they signed in free agency as well. Yeah. Sam Hubbard, Carl Lawson is still a nice pass rusher. So they've got guys along the defense line. Christian Covington,
who impressed me, who stood out to me the first 2 weeks, just as a nice rotational player. And I don't know if you did him coming out, but Amani Bledsoe.
He made some plays last week against Cleveland, Greg.
Yeah.
I actually didn't do him at Oklahoma, but
Neither did I.
Ben Fennell and I were watching the game earlier today. I was like, who's 91? Because he wasn't on my depth chart. I think he got added last week. And he's like, Amani Bledsoe. I was like, oh, all right. Like, I knew of the name, but I didn't know that he was there. He had a couple of nice pressures against Baker Mayfield last week.
The one thing that they had to address, and in their mind they had to address the linebacker position. Now, they drafted Jermaine Pratt last year in the 3rd round. I believe he was injured in college, was he not?
He was it wasn't, you know what it was? I don't believe he was injured, but he was only a 1-year starter because they had seniors ahead of him, even though he was a captain, but did play a decent amount.
And they brought in, and we're talking now in their base defense, they brought in Jack Hines, who's been around the league, but he's clearly one of those guys that stabilizes a linebacker unit. I remember him coming out of Auburn, great player in college, just one of those guys that probably wasn't quite athletic enough to be viewed as a big-time NFL player, but smart, savvy. I remember being out in Arizona a few years ago when Steve Wilkes was the head coach, and I was at training camp, and Bynes was the guy Wilkes kept going over to talk to about all the things they were going to do defensively. So he's clearly one of those guys that you bring in because he knows how to run your defense, and he always ends up somewhere, Fran, being a starter in base. He's not athletic enough to play in your sub, but he always starts in your base.
Yeah, he and Pratt both come off the field when they go into sub, and they bring these 2 rookies onto the field. Logan Wilson, who was a 3rd-round pick out of Wyoming, and then Akeem Davis-Gaither, the 4th-round pick out of Appalachian State. These 2 guys come onto the field. It's like a hockey line change. Bynes and Pratt, you guys are out. Jordan Evans gets reps there. Hey, you're out. Let's put Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither in there, and those guys play in nickel. You'll see them used in a variety of blitz packages, but then they also offer some coverage versatility as well.
Without question. And they signed Mackenzie Alexander to be their slot corner, and he's a quality NFL slot corner. So, obviously people are going to look at their corners. William Jackson was a 1st-round pick who's got speed. Obviously he was beaten by Beckham for the touchdown last week. The other corner is probably the guy people look to and say, hey, you can go after him, and that's Darius Phillips.
Yep.
But no, they look to get faster on defense, as every team is trying to do now. And that's what Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither bring them in their sub-nickel.
Yep, and Phillips he's a speedster out of Western Michigan, but he was not the planned starter. Trey Waynes they signed from Minnesota, hoping that he would be the starter. He got injured and now is on injured reserve, so they're waiting on, or they're counting on Darius Phillips to be the starter opposite William Jackson. Real quick on the safety spot, Greg. Jesse Bates playing in the post has been pretty impressive. He's made some nice plays from center field, some really rangy plays outside the numbers. Just a guy to kind of keep an eye on there playing center field is kind of the
they actually have an interesting safety tandem because Bates is a clear post/free safety, and Von Bell is a clear box type player.
Yep.
So they have a nice delineation there. So that's the way they map out. So their safety position is pretty good. They have gotten, I know they gave up a lot of points to Cincinnati on that Thursday nighter. And they're still a work in progress with so many new players in a pandemic off season. But they have some talented players on defense. Dunlap can still play. Sam Hubbard's a very versatile, multi-position defensive lineman. They do have some players who've got some talent.
Yeah, and they'll do some things from a pressure standpoint. They mix up their coverages. So, yeah, it's not an easy task, and they've certainly got some talent on both sides of the ball. So, Greg, you and I will be talking about this matchup 1 week from tonight here on the show. Appreciate you once again joining us on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. Thanks so much, and we will talk to you next week.
All right, Fran, thanks.
Before we continue with this episode, I want to take a quick second and remind you that we are now just 6 weeks away from Election Day. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, we're 6 weeks out from Election Day on November 3rd. Did you know that 4 years ago, 100 million eligible voters did not participate in the general election? And I don't care who you support, but voting matters, and that number is way, way too high. So I've got a short list of questions for you. Number 1, are you registered to vote? Number 2, if you are, have you checked to see if you can vote early? Do you know where you go to vote in your district? And do you know what time you can arrive at your polling place? If you answered yes to all of these, then you're ready to roll. But if not, you've got some work to do over the next couple of weeks. Voting matters, not just for the presidential election, but for your local and state elections as well. Please, it's all of our civic duty to make sure that our voices are heard. Go out and vote on November 3rd. Great stuff from Greg Cosell, who you can follow on Twitter, just like I do, at Greg Cosell. And while you're at it, I'm at Eagles XOs. That's where I post all the podcasts I'm a part of and all of our X's and O's content that we produce at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. And I greatly appreciate everybody that promotes this podcast on all forms of social media. That is one way to support the show, but the other way is to go into Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, leave us a rating, or even leave us a comment. I want to give a shout out to 3 people who went on and did exactly that. I really appreciate all you guys that have gone on and left some good ratings here in the start of the season. Homer072090 left a 5-star review saying how much they love the show. Shooter1234 left a 5-star review saying Fran and Greg provide detailed Eagles and scouting analysis. Go Birds. Really appreciate that, Shooter. And then one more from MCM1256547 left a 5-star review saying, hey, Fran, really enjoyed the podcast with Chris McPherson. Some people want to ignore these issues, but there are times when everyone needs to open their eyes and witness the injustice that goes on in this country. MCM could not agree more. My question is, from everything I have heard, the Eagles were expecting to play a lot of heavy dime with Will Parks as the 6th defensive back. Do you expect the Eagles to go more towards nickel and cover or on the back end coverage in his absence? So, MCM, good question. Obviously, we've got a 2-week sample size here. I haven't charted the nickel versus the dime. We have seen a little bit of dime, and the 6th defensive back has been Crayvon LeBlanc, so they've gone with 4 corners and 2 safeties. We did see a decent amount of big nickel with Marcus Epps as the 3rd safety. That allowed Jalen Mills and Rodney McLeod to play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage at times. We did see Epps closer to the line of scrimmage with Jalen Mills back on the deep end at times. I think when you're looking at that too, one of the big things that I thought was interesting is we're starting to get a sense of how the linebackers are used. When they're in their big nickel, we're seeing TJ Edwards there on the field with Nate Gary. When they're in regular nickel with 3 corners on the field, then you're seeing Duke Riley on the field with Nate Gary. So that's been kind of interesting just to see how they're utilizing those 2 linebackers. But yeah, when Will Parks is healthy, I fully expect that we'll see not just the big nickel with him as the 5th defensive back, but you'll start to see him more on the field as well in those dime packages. So it'll be interesting to see once he is healthy. There were high hopes for him coming into the season of what the role was going to be for him in this scheme. But I think, it'll be really interesting to be able to watch him once he's fully healthy. Hopefully he is back in the saddle soon. Good questions from all of you guys. Special thanks out there as well to Greg Cosell and all of you out there for your continued support of this show and all the rest of our podcast offerings on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. All that being said, I think that'll do it. Another show in the books here on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, fueled by Gatorade. For everybody here at the NovaCare Complex, I am Fran Duffy. We will talk to you later this week.